And it took me a long time to get to that place, sadly. I had to go to a mountain on the side, I had to go to a ranch on the side of a mountain in Wyoming to figure it out. But I am not the star of that show. That thing that the judge is doing, the screaming, the just acting like a prosecutor, that's not a personal affront to Casie Gotro. You're screwing with my client now, with Jake. And when it's a subtle paradigm shift for me, but it affected the way I cross-examined, right? Because I'm argumentative. I like to fight, and I'm a yeller. And when somebody starts getting squirrely with me, just answering Casey's questions, I tend to get a little aggressive, and I'll poke back. That does not do us any good with jurors. Attacking a witness just because it feels good or it's fun does us no good at all. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I am suggesting to you that you need your jury's permission to do that first. That you give your witness the benefit of the doubt, that you give them every opportunity to come in here and tell us all the truth. And so, if you're not going to do that, and I see my jury getting frustrated, all right, then I'm going to get it from you. But always, always, always with my client in mind. This is not my ego. This is not with Jake in mind. With Jake in mind. I didn't realize how much my crap got in the way of my cross-examinations, or any part of trial, really. But it did. It sure did. And I'll just suggest to you that before you go into your next trial, that you think about how much of your decision-making has to do with what is good for the case and your client, and how much of it is fear-based, because you're afraid of something, because you lawyer are afraid of something, because you lawyer don't want to be wrong or say something stupid, God forbid, because none of us have ever done that, right? Flawlessly, I speak all of the time. It's a gift. Your authenticity. This starts in voir dire. Voir dire is hands down my favorite part of trial, largely because it sets the stage for what you're going to get permission to do in your cross-examination. How many folks actually develop a theme, come up with a real theme, not the one you put in your trial notebook, but like a real theme for your case before you go to trial? Is there anybody that doesn't? I struggle with this. Because it's a remnant of law school, right? Witness will say something, and I know that I can impeach them, and I want to go and get my mock trial point by impeaching them on this thing, right? Develop your theme and stick with your theme. Start it off in voir dire, and if it is delayed discovery, last-minute dumps of thousands and thousands of pages of paper, stick with it then, so that when you get your witness on the stand, and he or she starts getting froggy with you about that very issue that you have identified in your voir dire, you'll get permission from your jury to get them if you get there. And so, be willing to shake. Be willing to let your knees knock, to sound like you're, in the middle of a opera performance. Be willing to do that, because that's human. That's not lawyer robot. What is the statistic that public speaking is the #1 fear of any human being alive? If you can show that piece of humanity, that you are nervous, unless you're one of those folks that just doesn't get nervous, if you can show that piece of humanity, juries are so forgiving. Like, they'll save you. They won't tolerate a witness being evasive or being rude. They won't have it. So just be willing to shelf that ego for a little bit and show some humanity. And do that in voir dire. That piece about playing the 13th juror, I always speak in we. I do it in my cross, I do it in closing, I do it in voir dire. We, the citizens, we're here to find out what happened that day. And good, bad, or ugly, let's go find it out, right? Well, you don't do that by only asking questions that you know the answer to, right? And you don't do that by only asking yes or no questions. And so if we are on a journey to find the truth, you have to listen to what the witness is saying. Pat McCann told me long time ago that, Casie, when you've arrived, you'll try a case with a single piece of paper, just one little piece of paper. And I thought he was out of his mind because I needed my would-be banker boxes with all the stuff in it. One piece of paper is all that you need to try a case. For me, it was papers and papers and papers of cross-examination that I had written out. I knew exactly what question was going to come next, and if it was yes, then I flowcharted over to here, and if it was no, then I flipped back 6 pages, and it was a holy rolling nightmare of paper and missing everything that was coming out of this witness's mouth. So I will suggest to you that the best skill that you can have in cross-examination is the ability to put your paper down and listen to what this person in front of you is saying. To trust your own curiosity, your own intellectual curiosity about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Because your jury's doing the same thing. They are listening very, very closely. And when you stick to that script and you start trying to steer your witness where you want them to go, it looks like you're one of those shifty, shady lawyers that's putting the baby raper on the street. I know what you're doing. Listen to that witness, and I guarantee you the questions that you're asking, the follow-up questions that you ask, your jury's thinking the same thing. And a really cool side effect of that is that you're like-minded. This is we. You're part of the we. It's that group think. And in my experience, they'll follow you to the well because we've been on the same page the entire trial. We've been on the same page. We're asking the same questions. We're thinking the same things. That also means being willing to concede that there's going to be some ugly that comes out. Don't fight it. Don't fight it. If there weren't any ugly, we wouldn't be in the courtroom, would we? Your forgetful witness. Those guys are something else. Well, if you wrote the offense report when you were supposed to, you might not have forgotten all of this. All right. This idea of role reversal. Has anyone here done any psychodrama work? Do you know what psychodrama is? Yeah, okay. Most don't. It's a little kooky. Some have described it as such. But if you can, in fact, press pause on what your agenda is while you're in trial, okay? Just press pause on that. And imagine sitting in that box, right? Knowing you screwed something up, your witness, and you're about to get questioned about it in front of a bunch of strangers. My stomach shakes now just thinking about that. Like, oh, of course you're going to be defensive. Of course you're going to be defensive. But if you can imagine for just that moment, whatever's going on with the witness, whether it's they're going to protect a lie or they're trying to hide something, if you can step into those shoes for just a hot minute, and we have all been there, they will tell you things, that defensiveness will go down, and they will tell you things that I can't even begin to describe. If you can just show a little bit of compassion, and I know it's like rubbing a cat the wrong way when I talk about showing compassion to police officers specifically. They're trying to put our clients in prison, and they lie to do it. It's infuriating. But within the confines of a cross-examination, right, where your single goal is to tell your story, compassion is a huge component of that. It is a huge component of that. Now look, when you're done with the cross, You don't have to shake his hand. You don't have to, be Facebook friends after that. But in that moment, if you want to get this human story out in a way that benefits your client and benefits your case, we can't stand toe-to-toe with those guys. We can't get in a slugfest because we will always lose. We will always lose. So if you just try to put yourself in those shoes for a hot minute, I'll suggest to you that you're far more effective, period, in telling your story and eliciting that truth. And the jury sees that. This is another struggle that I had. I used to not trust my jury. Like you mouth-breathing ding-dongs that couldn't even figure out how to get out of jury service. Christ, what am I going to do now? Well, have you ever met someone that on the first meeting you kind of knew they didn't like you? I was telegraphing that. I didn't even know it. I was telegraphing that because you are you, other. You are other, right? And that division feeds into the myths and misconceptions that they have about defense attorneys to begin with. And that was a hard leap for me as well. Learning how to trust a jury, learning how to trust those folks with my client, Jake. And once upon a time, I'd walk on my lips before I cried in public. And in the last couple of years, it seems like I can't get out of a closing without tearing up, because that idea of taking this life that I have fought often for years to save and giving it to someone else. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. If we can show these folks that have been entrusted to do the right thing, we can show them that we're looking for it too. We're looking for it too. We get better verdicts that way. We get much better verdicts that way. Yeah, last but not least, the banker's box of papers. Has anybody got an afternoon free? I'll buy the coffee. Does anyone have any questions about anything that I have said so far? Comments, observations, fruit you'd like to throw? Awesome. Yes, ma'am.
Are you thinking about filing any motions in relation to your bank?
Greenpeace has put out a hit on me already because of the trees that I've murdered with these folks. When I stood up and when I started this presentation, it's that. They're not going to do it. And consequences be damned. Be damned. They do not want to go to trial. Correct. And in every hearing, every email, everything I've ever done on this case, you could ask for a continuance. You could ask for a continuance. We don't have any objections to that. Like hell, we're not getting a continuance. Whole bouquet, every single one of them, beautiful and fragrant at the same time. And so, I feel my appellate conscience over here from Janie, and you would be very proud of the record that I have built. I will say that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Why don't you see if you can get about 10 or 15 law clerks and divide that up and have to go through that?
Along those lines, what I've thought about doing is every time a police officer takes the stand, setting that stack of papers on him in front of him. Have you seen this? Is this the same as what you wrote 3.5 years ago? Just a yes or no. That yes or no question I absolutely will ask. Yeah. Every time. I was going to bring it with me for a visual aid, but it was too hard to carry. So I left it at home. But no, I think I'm going to let my police officers answer those questions. So I'll be up near, Baylor for the next couple of weeks if y'all want to come by and say hello. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to peel out. Thank you very, very, sorry. I did not keep my cool. I did not keep my. So Stanley Schneider told me to don't be afraid to take a break, right? And so I could go about 50 minutes, and I'll tell you, you don't wear mascara, do you, Clint? You don't wear mascara, right? So if you cry, it runs, and the black streaks go down your face. So that first day, I would have to walk into the antechamber out of the courtroom and do this so that the tears would just go straight to the carpet and not make the mascara go down my face because of the things that she was saying. I fundamentally believe that prosecutors and defense attorneys, that we do this for the right reasons, that the system largely works. It works. We all do our jobs. Good people go home. Bad people go to prison. And listening to some of her ideas about what her obligations were as a prosecutor broke my heart, made me speechless. And I'll submit to you that the anger, it took a couple of days before the anger came, because up front it was just a record scratch of what the. So this whole thing's a farce. How am I not a party to it? David Temple's out today.